Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Masters as they travel the Vortex and arrive at episode 486. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm better.
You're better.
I'm still a bit gravelly, as you can hear.
Yeah, so we'll have to apologize to our listeners. So we've been out 2 weeks, but that's because of, it's not all Keith's fault. I don't want to make it sound like that, but Keith's been ill.
Keith's fault.
Keith's been ill, or not even so much ill, but just without voice. So we figured we'd wait until he could be up to full strength and we could come back. So
yeah, I was sounding even worse all last week, so luckily I'm almost back to normal.
I think, what was it, the first week was you were gravelly, and then the second week that we were going to try to do it, we had that cough that your voice would result in that cough, and you were afraid that you'd go in a coughing fit. So
yeah, they were all kind of mixed together there.
Did you guys do anything fun?
Happy birthday, Sean.
Yeah, happy
Thank
birthday.
you. I turned a year old.
Recording on his birthday.
What did you do anything special for your birthday?
No, it was pretty low key. We have a couple of friends that kind of are in our pod, as it were, and so we just got together and played a game and cooked and then watched True Lies.
Did you get to pick the movie?
I didn't. They asked, and I couldn't decide. So then Patrick says, "How about True Lies?" I was like, "Oh yeah, good." And Mel was all kind of, "I'm sorry, it wasn't anything big." And I was like, "Are you kidding? We got to play games. I got enchiladas. I got Jamie Lee Curtis in her underwear. This was a great birthday." So, but I actually took today off just to kind of have a day, and then wound up. I didn't get any of the things done that I wanted to get done. Like I kind of had, not necessarily busy work, but just I had kind of a plan for my relaxation and didn't get to any of it. So I think I need another day off.
I'm off all this week. I took this week off. This is usually my spring break week that I take off. Although I missed spring break this year because the kids were actually on spring break last week, but I had already put in for this week, so.
What are you going to do?
Kids are usually on this. Just stuff around the house, I'm not going anywhere or anything. Maybe catch up on some movies and maybe some TV series that I'm trying to catch up on. But I've got a few projects around the house, some honey-do lists to check off.
We started Resident Alien.
I tried the first episode and didn't really like it too much.
Really?
That's the one with Adam Tudzik.
Alan Tudzik.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah.
Alan Tudzik. Yeah. Did I say Adam? Alan.
I enjoyed it, but I think it's very much him that carries it. So it kind of depends on where you land on how much enjoyment he gives you.
Have either of you seen Doom Patrol?
Not yet.
He is so good in that. He plays Mr. Nobody, who's pretty much the antagonist, at least the first season, and he is just the character is just insanely crazy. And he pulls it off so well.
He plays that very well.
Man, he does it so well.
I didn't realize he was the bad guy. Now it gives me more incentive to watch that.
Yeah.
Might have to bump that up on the list a little bit.
It's one of those kind of off the wall kind of, maybe sort of in the vein of like Deadpool for DC's universe. It's more adult themed, kind of not really fourth wall breaking, but it's sort of, well, I guess, yeah, it's a little fourth wall breaking as well, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I haven't started the second season yet, so I probably wasn't oh God, I got to move right on, but I did, truck through it. Titans is on my schedule to watch now too. I've been watching, going back and not catching up, but doing another watch through the MCU. This time I'm going chronological. So Captain America first, and then Captain Marvel, which is the only two we've done so far, but first time I've done it this way, not really sorter.
Nice.
Really strange how well Captain Marvel fits into that first block. You wouldn't think so, but it does.
Not bad. Holly hadn't seen it either, so she's actually she said, I told her I was going to do the watch through again. There's a few that she's never seen, and so she said, well, when you let me know what you're watching, and if it's one I haven't seen, I'll watch it. And I was like, okay. And so I said, well, okay, the first one was Captain America, First Avenger. She goes, okay, I haven't seen that. I was like, really? I thought you'd seen that. Nope. So she watched that. And then I said, well, we're going to do another one you haven't seen because I know you haven't seen Captain Marvel. So far, the first two we've done are ones she hasn't seen yet. So, although Iron Man's next, and I know she's seen that, but she may watch that one again because she likes Robert Downey Jr.
Well, that one's so good.
I wanted to give
I thought the resolution of WandaVision was very satisfying.
Yeah, man, that was so good. And very pleasant to see that all the expectations of the fanboys didn't play out the way everybody thought. I love that how everybody was figuring stuff out as it went, and there were some theories that were, kind of came to fruition, but I thought they were obvious ones. But some of the ones that they were certain of just did not pan out at all. But it was a good finale. So good.
I read a fun little article. They were discussing how they were really struggling apparently with I don't know how spoilery we want to get since, it has aired now, but I'm going to leak something that could potentially be a spoiler. So you've been warned. But with the Vision fight, that they wanted to make sure that it was equal parts cerebral as well as physical. And so they hit upon the story of the boat, the ship of Theseus, whatever that particular thing is, which I had actually heard elsewhere. I think I initially heard that in a Terry Pratchett novel, that he kind of borrowed that as this is the axe of my father.
It's also in a it's in a film too, and I can't remember. Maybe it'll come to me. I didn't realize it was in the film, but I just seen this week that it's also been used in another movie.
But they hit upon that idea and thought, oh, that'll be great. That's exactly what we need. So they wrote the whole thing and did it. And apparently it wasn't until way later in the production that somebody said, oh, you pulled that from the comic, huh? And they went, what? And they said, yeah, it's in the Vision comics that they do this exact, some of the dialogue even. We thought you just lifted it from the comic. And they kind of rolled their eyes and went, wow, that would have been a lot easier to write had we known that. And once again, I have to point to the continuity folks and go, well, you have one job, guys. But I was very pleased.
I like how Paul Bettany pretty much trolled everybody in all of the interviews. He was saying that there was a guy he really wanted to work with. He was really excited to work with, and he finally got to work with him. And so, of course, everybody for weeks were speculating who was this guy, who was this going to be the surprise guest appearance that Paul Bentley hadn't worked with and was excited to work with. And,
this great actor.
And this great actor. And then he did finally reveal that he was referring to himself.
Oh, I love Paul Bettany.
I do too. He's a good
the making of Assembled was pretty interesting too, to see the level of detail they went into in the 50s episode.
Yeah. It didn't occur to me that a lot of his facial stuff is tracked CG.
Yeah, me neither. I figured it was just prosthetics.
Yeah. Which has to probably be better that he doesn't have to put all the prosthetics on for that.
Oh, yeah.
He just has to paint himself purple.
And then maroon.
Yeah. He was blue. I thought it was interesting too that they had to paint him blue for the black and white stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a plug out to, I've just received a book called Bookworm, an unauthorized and unconventional guide to the Doctor Who novels, Volume 1. It's from ATB Publishing, and I just got it in the mail, and Volume 1 is the New Adventures, and so it's 1991 to 1997, and it seems to me, from what I can tell, it's kind of maybe like similar to the Discontinuity Guide, but for the novels, and I'm assuming Volume 1, because it's the New Adventures, Volumes 2 is probably going to be the Eighth Doctor Adventures, Volume 3, or maybe the Missing Adventures will be Volume 2, and then so I'm wondering if they're going to go through all the different book lines and do them. But I've just had a quick brush through it, and it looks really interesting. That's probably all I'm going to say about it now. I probably will review it, but it will be way down the line because I'm going to kind of read it as I'm finishing each of the novels. And since I'm only about 10 or 11 books into the series so far, it's going to be a little while before I get there. So
might take a little bit.
Right. You guys do anything else this week?
We just celebrated Liam's birthday.
Oh, right.
With a
Yeah,
party
1
with
year old.
grandparents on Saturday, which was fun. And I think he had a good time. He's not quite used to being the center of attention like his sister is, so he was a little bit shy, but he warmed up and liked his smash cake.
Can't believe he's that old already.
I know.
I know.
Been a year.
He's almost walking, standing up on his own from not even holding on to anything and being able to take a couple of steps, so it's not far away.
Toddler years are coming.
Oh, yes.
Well, do we have any news to talk about today?
One bit of news. Big Finish announced that a long-lost Russell T. Davies story will be brought to life on audio. Now, this is a story written in 1986 by RTD called The Mind of Hodiak. And this will star Colin Baker and Bonnie Langford as the Sixth Doctor and Mel.
Very
so
cool.
It's being co-written by Russell T. Davies and Scott Hancock for the new audio edition.
So what do we know about this? Is this something that he wrote and was like a spec script, or is this something he wrote and was going to submit as one of his novel ideas? Because he wrote one of the Virgin New Adventures as well.
I believe it was like just a hour-long episode synopsis. He wrote a whole hour-long episode plus a detailed synopsis for the second final episode.
I see.
So it's kind of just a fan-made script that he wrote.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Is there any indication, or do we know, was it originally written as a Sixth Doctor script, or did Big
Given that
Finish
he wrote it in
take this
86, I'm
opportunity?
assuming it was.
I'm sorry?
Given it was written in 86, I'm assuming it was, but
Okay.
they don't specify.
very cool. Well, I'm excited to get more Russell T. Davies stuff. It's been a while since I've gotten any Doctor Who from him other than the little things he's done.
Yeah, it'll be really cool to hear him write for an old Doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, shall we review our book?
I am the master. So I'm not going to read the synopsis for the book itself because we have synopses for each individual stories. So first up is Anger Management. Blackmailed by a sinister biomechanoid, the master must use his talents to liberate 3 alien warlords held captive on Earth. Can he turn the tables on his oppressors?
It's all right.
Yeah, I was kind of lukewarm on this one.
Yeah, lukewarm's a good definition for it. It didn't wow me out of the gate for the book.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting choice to start the book with this one because the way it's structured, I was not a fan of the disjointed, nonlinear editing that was at work, and obviously it's done for a reason. But I don't know that it was necessary. When you get down to it, in fact, there's one of the passages winds up actually happening well before everything else, but you don't realize it because it comes so late in the run. And it's like, oh, I see what you did, and I just don't know that it was necessary for the way the story was portrayed. It didn't necessarily tie into that. It was all that well, but that made me think, well, this is a very I don't know. I wanted more. With the fact that the master's in jail, and my first thought was this is Stormgate or Seagate or whatever the prison in the Third Doctor.
Stormcage.
Say, which one?
Stormcage.
No. The actual
the
prison.
one that he was in.
The seaside resort. That was my first thought, was that he was actually there, or that the alien was casting him back there. During it, but it didn't quite. We didn't get enough to really know if that was meant to be the same one or not. But the idea of being able to mentally confine someone for weeks at a time, even though it's only been 2 minutes, that I thought that was a very cool idea. And wow, if the master ever gets out of this, you guys are all dead because he's gonna be so pissed off. But the actual story of why they were doing it and the reasonings behind it, I just was kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I think that was my problem. Is I was intrigued by this whole slow captivity idea, where it was just a few moments for the jailer or the whatever he was, the warden, but it was like weeks and weeks for the master, and I thought that was such a very cool concept that I think that had the story expounded on that a little bit, I think it would have been, that's more what I wanted. I agree that the story that we get in between with just these capturing these fugitive warlords, it was different. It wasn't something that has been done before. I mean, it was kind of a cleverly written, but it wasn't all that intriguing or exciting, and I never really felt like there wasn't anything on the line until the very end, which I do like the conclusion of this. I think the double cross with the guy not actually being the jailer, not actually being who he says he was, and that he was actually trying to rescue these guys so that they can, go on, and they were going to ditch the master and destroy Earth. I liked that, and I love the way that the master ends up subverting that and getting his revenge on them. So all of that was really cool, but it felt like the lead up to that was just kind of a trudge. And not all that exciting.
Trudge is a good word for it. Well, it wasn't even like it was over. There was a little bit of clever ideas in how they revealed the warlords and got them to come with him, but it wasn't that, the master puts on a disguise and pretends to be somebody else. It's not overly original as far as that goes.
Yeah.
I feel like the Delgado master deserved better than this story.
Yeah, although I think that the author had Delgado's voice. I think very much it was in the spirit of Delgado. So I think that was nailed. And the idea of using...
I'll agree with that.
And the idea of using the master of disguises. I think that worked really well. All right, anything else on this one? Let's move on to the next one.
The dead travel fast. Holidane in Whitby, Bram Stoker is plunged into a world of horror when a grandfather clock washes to shore together with the hideous remains of the dying master who will do anything to survive.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, I like this one too.
This was one of my favorites in the book.
I would have to
I've
agree.
always loved any sort of story that, gives a justification for why somebody would write a story like Dracula and how he came to that inspiration. And this does such a good job doing it all through Bram Stoker's eyes, too. It's never from the master's perspective, which I think executes it perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're using, Crispy Master here, ping pong ball eye master, as Sean would call him. I think it works really well for that. Stories like this, where they utilize a perspective of a person and giving a reason or a history for why somebody did something or why somebody wrote something, they can be sort of hit or miss. There are some that can be done really well, and there are some that aren't so good. I think Time Lash is one of those ones that had a lot of perspective or a lot of potential with H.G. Wells, but I don't think it delivers. Whereas this idea does, and I like that it doesn't go so far as to get too morbid, but it gets morbid and enough in order for it to inspire the Dracula tale.
And it doesn't hit you over the head with, we're doing Dracula, we're doing Dracula, we're doing Dracula. And it walks that fine line between that and stretching so far that it's Stretch Armstrong to make the two things fit together.
Right.
That's where most of the stories either they fail because they are stretching so hard to make it be, the connections, kind of like Time Lash does, or they bang you over the head so heavy-handed that there's no subtlety to it at all. And this walks that fine balance where you see all the influences, but never points out and says, "Hey, see how clever I'm being." Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much Time Lash doesn't work because there's simply not enough reasoning for H.G. Wells to be in the story. He's just there, and he doesn't glean. It doesn't really feel like he gleans enough of War of the Worlds or the Time Machine to really make that justifiable. It's there, but it's meh. This, however, is like it reminded me a lot of the what's the 13th Doctor story that they just aired,
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very similar to that. And first of all, the fact that we get Crispy Master, oh, sweet. I am all kinds of on board for this. And the fact that that's the inspiration for the Dracula tale, not necessarily the, vampiric legends, but just the undead,
Right,
the feeding on the life. And it's like, oh, that is so cool. Really, really enjoyed that aspect of it.
And the way the author describes, not only the Master, but the TARDIS from Stoker's perspective. You're kind of having to interpret, oh, he's talking about the TARDIS, oh, he's talking about the interior. He just does it so well and with such great descriptions that you can totally visualize it even without them using the words.
Yeah. Stoker was just so well written as a character, but also in how he would interpret things, and you can see how he makes the leap from this to the fictionalized account to come.
Yeah,
based on how he's describing it now.
I think one of the other things that it does, it serves kind of retroactively. I've always had, they've probably done this in literature or other maybe audios or whatnot, but I think what it does for me is it gives kind of a reason why Peter Pratt's crispy ping pong ball eye master is more deteriorated than Jeffrey Beaver's version, and it gives an excuse for he's able to use the regenerative or he's able to get a little bit of regeneration or drawing the life force out of other things, and it's never quite enough. And I think it's implied that his next attempt would have been on a human if Stoker had rescued the girl. But it gives you the impression that there is a reason why he's not quite as decayed and decrepit by the time that we get to Keeper Atrakan. So I think that kind of subtly answers that.
Yeah, you also kind of get the impression that it doesn't last as long each time, too.
Right. Well, and I think that's why he was needing to work up to bigger things to draw the life force.
Yeah. Good story.
It is.
Story.
Yeah, that I would agree with what Keith said. That's probably one of my favorites in the whole thing. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Missy's magical mystery mission. Is Cleaner Daphne Nullis really the best choice to enter a contest to possess the ultimate power in the universe? And is the manically helpful hologram Miss E all she seems?
I'll bump this one because I really liked this one. Let's talk about
this one. Was a lot of fun.
Talk about having the voice of the character. I think this is Missy dead on, but I also like the idea that the majority of this is from a mistake that has happened with this. Was it Daphne? Was that her name? With her ending up in the wrong place at the wrong time and thinking it's something else, thinking it's one of these retreats, and thinking that she's, I love the whole setup of how she's kind of this good, wholesome girl who's working for this, crime lord or bad guy or overlord or whatever he is over this planet or society or whatever. But she works for him, but her intention is, instead of being as far away from him as she can, she feels that if she can be close enough to him to influence him to do just some nice things, that she's, doing a good thing. And so she's deluded enough to be that at that point as we set it up, only to when she gets, sent to this planet, that Missy's brought her to this planet with these other guys, and the comedy of errors of her not understanding what's really going on here and playing this off, it's the retreat, it's a test, it's management sent us here in order to work together better, and thinking that the deaths weren't permanent, that they were probably zapped to back home or whatever, and being actually at one point envious that somebody had died because they probably were now home and she's still going on and she's tired. I think it's so good.
Contemplating, and then, maybe I should throw the next one.
Right, exactly. And then the lead up to the revelation of what this is and her actually being rewarded with it, I thought was just the icing on the cake.
It was a lot of fun. I don't know that I was quite as enamored with the resolution, because my first thought was it just felt like such a miscalculation on Missy, on her part, that really, you should know better by now that you have this MO where you team up with the supervillain, and then they turn on you, and you don't have all your ducks in a row, and you have to rely on somebody else for help, and that's kind of your shtick. You would think that regeneration after regeneration after regeneration that you would have gotten it right. And now you're telling me that you ultimately got zapped into this computer, that you're trapped in there, but you have managed to turn the tables on him, and now you're going to, well, that's not going to work, dear. Because, yeah, well, so I don't know. I always want to give the characters more credit maybe than what they're due.
Yeah. Well, I think, though, that oftentimes the trope is the master thinks, or mistress or missy thinks, that they are in control of a situation, and they partner with somebody or something or some race or some species. And then they always seem, once it's revealed that they've been betrayed, or the master's been betrayed or turned on, then she is often put on their back footing for the rest of the story. So it's kind of refreshing to have a story where she's already in control. She's already been duped into this situation, and she's cleverly getting out of it to a point. It does end up turning on its head at the end for her anyway, but she ultimately gets what she needed out of it. So to me, that worked okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with that aspect of it at all, and I had a lot of fun reading it. I thought all the characters were a hoot and a bit ridiculous, and Daphne just felt so absolutely British about the whole thing. So polite and proper about the entire process that it just made it so much fun to read.
It reads
an origin story for Mary Poppins.
Yeah, it reads very much like a Pratchett novel too. It's just, the characters are very similar. The stylized, which is interesting because I don't think I've ever read anything that Jacqueline Rayner's written that was in this kind of style or tone. So I think it was really neat that she was able to kind of put something forward that's a little more unique and different than I think she's typically done in the past.
Did she write The Stone Rose?
Oh, she has written so many things.
She did.
I cannot remember.
I would say I seem to think that The Stone Rose, there are elements of that toward the end when they're getting into it's a toy that grants wishes that I think that's probably as close as we've gotten to something that's this farcical.
Yeah.
From her that I'm aware of, that we've come across so far.
She also wrote Earthworld, which was a little kind of out there as well. Not to be confused with Crooked World.
And she did write Doctor Who and the Pirates.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well.
So she's been able to write outside the box on a lot of different things. None of them are ever the same though either. So I suppose that's the mark of a good writer, I guess. Very good. Well, let's move on to the next one.
A Master of Disguise. The Master is forced to engineer a daring and desperate heist in order to save the architect of his many disguises from certain death.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, this one was good.
This one might be my second favorite of the grouping. I really enjoyed the fact that we're just going to go ahead and lean into the idea that, yes, the Master employs a guy to create rubber masks. Yeah, because it's one of those things that, you watch the show, and when he peels his face off, it is not a really cool Mission Impossible digital, because it couldn't be.
Yeah.
But they don't bother with any kind of a technobabble. It's not a holographic imaging. It's not a forced perspective. It's not a perception filter. It's a rubber mask.
Yeah.
And the fact that he fools people with these rubber masks is always, and I can't tell a lie. I'm always surprised. He fools me with them. So the fact that this guy, this artist, is hard at work creating all these things, and the Master's got him locked up, and once again is outsmarted by him and outfoxed by him, it was like, yeah, that's cool.
Oh, and even to the fact where he eventually employs nesting plastic to make the masks. That makes total sense.
Yeah, that was a cool tidbit.
I think it's interesting how they depict the Master as going to such lengths in order to try to save this mask maker. It's almost like he does wind up having an emotional attachment to the guy too, even though he tries to play it off as he doesn't.
Yeah, he's it's a weird dynamic because he keeps him locked up. He built the prison just to hold him. He ignores him for long stretches of time, and yet he's willing to drop everything at a moment's notice when it suddenly is, wait, what do you mean you're not going to be here when I need you?
Right.
Well, I got the impression, because the Master who kidnaps him is obviously, it's implied that it's the Delgado Master. So I kind of get the impression that the long period he was gone is when he's crispy and is working to get his body back, or a body, and has no use for rubber masks. But now he's restored himself and can now utilize Moses again.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a cool idea. And then the exploration of the toll that takes on Moses and how long that takes is I thought, fairly well done.
So in your mind, then, this is the Ainley Master.
This is definitely
the
the
one-
Master.
Okay.
The one who comes back later, yes, is the Ainley.
Yeah, the one
That's what I took out of it as well.
the one that took Moses hostage or prisoner was the Delgado Master, and the one that has come back and is in the majority of the story is the Alien Master.
And I got the impression that, and maybe I was just reading into it, knowing what the timeline would be, is the reason he's dressed up as the Fourth Doctor is he knows that he probably won't bump into him because he's regenerated.
Right. I liked this a lot. In fact, I like that you're sort of set up to think that Moses has sort of gotten used to. In fact, he's happy with his situation because he refers to the fact that he's doing something that he is basically getting to do what he loves to do, and so it puts you in this sense of he's complacent, or not even complacent. He's satisfied with where he is, despite the fact that the Master's been gone for so long. And yeah, like Sean was saying, to have the Master come back and then suddenly, oh well, I need you. I need your, you can't die. I have to keep this going on. I think the one thing that I think was necessary, but I felt like was still too much of a reward for the Master, although in these particular stories, the Master is, for all intents and purposes, our protagonist. But it's implied that Moses left behind enough masks for many years and many dupes to come. So the Master still, even though he loses his mask maker, he still has, dozens upon dozens of masks that he still can use. And it explains why, he perhaps still employed masks occasionally after his regeneration.
And
In my mind, that just tied in World Enough. Is it World Enough in Time?
Yeah.
So, there's one.
I think the other thing too that I took away from this is, at one point Keith, you were talking about was because he was in between regenerations, and I think that probably is part of it. But I think also as he regenerated into the Ainley Doctor, doesn't he say at some point that he was trying to use block?
This guy's using block transfer computation.
Yeah, block transfer computation in order to do the disguises, but it didn't quite work out, so that's why he ends up trying to utilize Moses again. I like this one. It was good, and I think I felt that and maybe it didn't for you, Sean, because you were questioning it, but I felt like it was very much in the tone of the Ainley Master as well.
It was. I find, perhaps this is sacrilegious, Ainley does a slightly more campy Delgado.
Yeah, I would agree.
And when reading, I find that their voice is similar enough that without the Ainley camp kind of layered on top of that, it's easy to for me to fall into the, I'm really not sure which version this is. And like you, it wasn't until the block transfer computation line that I went, okay, that defies it a little bit more for me, that it's probably the Ainley Master. But
I don't know if any of the other masters would be campy enough to try to pull off the fourth Doctor.
That's true.
I don't know if any of them had the flair for that.
Missy.
Right.
Okay, yeah, she would be the one.
Well, shall we move on to the Night Harvest?
A farm worker from a backwater planet, Tala has always dreamed of meeting a stranger from the stars. When the Master arrives, the truth of her world is exposed in a way that will change her life forever.
I'm going to give this one a bump, but it's one that kind of comes at the end of the story. Because as it progressed, I really wasn't sure I was enjoying it. It was okay. It was just kind of there. And, well, the Master's using somebody, but this time it's, from their point of view. So it's like, oh, you poor thing. We know what's going to happen, of course. And then it didn't. We kind of got the rug pulled out from under us with the way that the twist at the end happened. And I was like, I'm strangely satisfied with this. And now I kind of want an adventure with the Master and his companion. Yeah. I want more of this kind of dynamic to see what happens.
Yeah, I think they've probably addressed this, but as we were going through this, I almost sort of wondered if this was Lucy, and that later it would be revealed that that they ended up getting married. She changed her name and to pull off this whole Saxon ploy. I kind of thought maybe they were going down that road. Now, as the story progressed and things kind of changed, I could tell they were going a different route with it. But I'm with you, Sean. I think that for the most part, it was a middling story until the end. And then when they kind of turned it on its head, I sort of thought, okay, that the end justified the means. The end justified how we got there. The lead up to it now feels much better because of where we ended up. And sometimes the story will do that, and you'll look back and go, okay, I did enjoy that story. I just didn't know it until we got to the resolution.
Because there's no, real reason given for why he's mucking around with the vines. And,
right.
The science elements of it are just kind of there as the framework, because it's all about her reactions to him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why that payoff works, is because there was no MacGuffin. There was no rest of the story that we were missing out on. It was purely about moving her from this to this.
Yes.
So I think that's why it suddenly worked. Because if we hadn't gotten that twist at the end, then I would have questioned, well, why were we bothering with all of this? But it wasn't necessary. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines.
All right. Well, let's do the last one, which was a long one.
The longest of them all. The Master and Margarita. Marooned by the Doctor on Earth for 77 years, the Master becomes scientific advisor to the Soviet equivalent of UNIT, with a deadly agenda of his own. But his plans take a strange twist with the coming of an unearthly comrade Cap.
Somebody else bump up all this one.
I don't know that I could bump on it. There are elements to the story that I enjoyed, but I think this story was way too long and middling for its own good. I think that this story could have been the same length as any other story and in this book and still been what it was. I think that, to me, there feels like there was an idea here for a novel, for a bigger, longer form story, and then didn't. It just feels like as it's being written, it's like, okay, I don't know that it is a novel, so maybe it's novella. And then as you're reading it, I kind of think, well, I'm wondering even if there's enough here for it to be a novella, because really all I'm doing is getting a lot of what the Master is doing on Earth while he's waiting to catch back up to part 2 of Skyfall. So I don't think the story's all that exciting. The double cross from the weird extraterrestrial guy and the Silurian girl or Sea Devil girl, whichever one. I'm not even sure what we were supposed to imply. They talked about the third eye, so I'm assuming it was one of the.
I'm assuming it was just Silurian.
Well, or yeah. So I kind of went that way too, but just it seemed like there was a lot. I like the idea of the Master having his own unit to serve. That was kind of a neat perspective, as with the the last story, the master picking up a companion. In this story, it's the master basically subverting his way into a unit situation for Russia rather than the UK or the UN. So the idea there is sound, but it just there's not a lot going on in this story. And then I thought that the resolution of it did catch me off guard. I had no idea that his experiment with mind control was what was happening to him. So kudos to the author for being able to write it in such a way that I didn't figure that out until the bird landed on his shoulder and was in that cave. And so that was neat, and that was a neat resolution, but it took way too long to get there, and maybe it needed a lot of that setup to get to that, but I still think it could have been a shorter story.
Yeah, I think the idea of the master with a Russian unit is a cool idea, but it felt like he needed to have some sort of ulterior motive other than biding his time the entire time.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, or for his real master plots to be revealed, and there really wasn't one.
There's not. Yeah, you're right.
I think the detriment to this is, and maybe this is our misfortune, coming off of the Unbound universe. If this had been an Unbound master story, where he served as the scientific advisor to Russia during the same time frame that the Doctor was unit scientific advisor, and there were a few more world-shattering implications of that. If you could up the stakes, if you could throw an alien invasion that he kind of thwarts because he can't take it over the way he would want, or something that justifies him being there, or heck, give him the invasion. Flat out, because it's an Elseworlds tale, I think it would have worked better.
Yeah.
But we're not in that universe. We're in the regular universe. So then suddenly you have to continue to be relegated to the background. You can't do anything flashy. You're behind the Iron Curtain. It's whatever you do is going to remain secretive there.
Right.
And so the stakes really never were anything other than for him and the people that were surrounding him. That was as big as it got. Mm-hmm. Is he going to kill the next door neighbor? Is the Silurian going to turn the tables on him? Nothing really happens.
Right.
And for as long as this thing is, and it is long, and I don't want to dog on that aspect of it, because there's an interesting story here. But if we're not going to get anywhere, why spend this length spinning our wheels?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the biggest
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's why I think I would have probably enjoyed this story had it been much shorter, because I think that you didn't have to have a lot of that long form setup. I don't think you had to have that setup of how he and Caveau had gotten infiltrated into the Soviet equivalent of UNIT. I don't think you needed all of that. I think you could have dropped it in the middle of that already happening. I don't think you had to establish a lot of the side characters that we had going on here. I think you had to have some key players in order to present to us that the Master had a way to make people believe that they were in certain situations and it was very real to them, and impress his bosses, and then have it used against him without him knowing it. I think all of that could have been done and still been a good story in a much more compact version.
Yeah. And it feels to me slightly out of character, the fact that he's developing these relationships with all these people. I mean, everything we've seen of this Master, aside from the deception he was putting on at the beginning of Spyfall, was nothing that would show that he would form these emotional attachments. And he seems to have formed that with the Silurian lady and the neighbor next door, and even the Russians he was working with. So it also just felt out of character for him.
This was another one that, other than the occasional turn of phrase, I was never 100% for certain which Master it was meant to be. His personal relationships and how cordial he was, how civilized he was, very much put me in mind of the Delgado master. But it just felt like, well, it's got to be, and honestly, for me, it was kind of process of elimination because, well, we haven't had one with the current master, and he's on the cover of the book. So that's probably who this is. But I never really felt like the voice got there for me.
Well, there's that conversation with Caveau. Yeah, I agree. It does not feel like Sacha Dhawan's master. But there's that conversation very early on where he explains why he's been waiting for 77 years. And he particularly refers to the master, or to the doctor, as she. So that right there was like, okay, well, you've cemented it for me who this master's supposed to be. And I was the same way. I
must have glazed over that part of it then, because I remember the conversation about, oh, he's over there, he's set up base. Is it my fault that, they tend to like Suffolk or wherever he's, invading in England right now? But
well, and that was the other thing
that part of it.
That's the other thing I think was done well, to drive home the fact that the master knew that he couldn't do anything very overt because he would mess up things, because there's another version of him that is over in the UK where the doctor is doing his thing. And I think it's also implied that he has to basically wait out these 77 years. And so I think that I'm on the opposite side of Keith. I kind of liked exploring the fact that he does get cozy up to some people, because obviously he was he got sent back, he got stranded in the World War II.
World War II.
And so it's already been 30 years that he's been, stuck, or 25 years since he's been stuck. And so he's biding his time. And I think that what this story does is it shows the doctor the master letting his guard down a little bit. And maybe because of the length of time that he's here, and he can't be too overt about his plans, and he can't. So I could see him starting to get attached, and I think that's why I think it's written well at the end that he walks away from it all, because I sort of expected him to give the next door neighbor lady a little more sympathy than he does when he walks away from it all. And so I think it's at that point in the book or in the story that he realizes that, hey, I am getting a little too soft here. I need to kind of straighten myself out. And I think that's also why he falls under the trap of, what was it? They kept calling him Comrade Cap and Caveau, the double cross of Caveau. I think that the idea was he got reckless, he got comfortable, and he learned from that. And so that probably was even more informed the character that we got post Skyfall.
That's a good point. And I hadn't really thought of it that way. But as to also going back to what Sean was saying about voice, there were large chunks of this book or this story that I forgot it was the master.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the misdirection at the beginning where we don't know who this guy is, and we just assume he's a Russian, and then they reveal that, oh, no, wait, that's actually the master. But then even after that, throughout the book, there would be times until they would go to reference the doctor or reference the master, I would forget that I was reading about the master.
Yeah.
A little too much deep cover.
Matthew Sweet, what else has he written? Name sounds vaguely familiar. Nothing that we've reviewed. He's done some Big Range, Year of the Pig.
Year of the Pig.
Magic Mousetrap.
That's the only thing
we haven't got to those two yet. And some Jago and Lightfoot.
Yeah, we've done Magic Mousetrap, haven't we?
I don't think so.
Isn't that the Seventh Doctor and?
Seventh Doctor and Hex and
the Toy Maker.
Yes.
The toy room.
Right. It is. Yes, we have done that one.
Okay. So yeah.
So, looking back overall, the book, I think it's got some wins and it's got some losses. I think its biggest detriment as a whole is it's a collection of short stories plus one novella, which I didn't think it needed to be. I have to wonder if the book came about, the anthology idea came about based on one long story, or if the they didn't feel that the book was going to be long enough if they didn't do that because they didn't have enough. I don't know where they came from that, but I think that it does a disservice to have the one long story that sort of meanders and doesn't do much, and almost short. It makes it feel like the ones that I enjoyed more. I wish they had been longer. I wish I'd have gotten more time with them if we're going to, truly balance. But, when people submit stuff, I don't think they're under so much, okay, it has to be. It's not like the, New Adventure and Target days where you had to be 180 pages and you're done. So I don't think there's that many restrictions when they're setting these things up, but I don't know how a book ends up being so unbalanced like this.
I'm kind of glad that this story, the long one, they structured it to be last, because had this story been first, I would have been a little disheartened to continue the book.
Yeah, that's true. Although the book would have flown by right after that.
Well, that's true. It would have been quickly over.
Yeah.
Or even if they had stuck it smack dab in the middle, it would have been like a slog through the middle half of the book. It would have been...
God, that would have been like reading The Two Towers. It would have just gone on and on and on and on. Yeah, I'm with you. There's a couple of nuggets of gold in here, but man, it was a lot of work to get to them.
All right, well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up next on the schedule, we revert to Big Finish storytelling as we jump into the Time War. And we're going to
the war. We jump into the war.
The war.
Big Finish, the War Doctor series, and we're going to do the complete series 1, book 1. I'm not sure what the box set 1, however you want to look at it.
Volume 1.
Volume 1. The 3 stories included are The Innocent, The Thousand Worlds, and The Heart of the Battle.
Only the monstrous.
That is next, followed by A Return to Titan comics, and The 13th Doctor, Volume 2, which is the graphic novel that contains issues 5 through 8. And then Return to the 8th Doctor. Paul McGann graces us with Big Finish 8th Doctor Adventures, Season 4, Number 2, Situation Vacant. So for those of you that like to keep along with us, there's that. Following that, we have a discussion on base under siege stories, kind of the concept, the rules, is it good for Doctor Who, that kind of thing, just a generalized discussion plan. And I want to ask you guys here, it was brought up as to whether or not that should be open for feedback from our listeners or how we wanted to handle that. And I don't know, maybe we want to throw that out there to the listeners to let us know if they want to take part in the discussion, or...
Sure. Yeah, no, I like that. I like the idea.
Okay, then let us know. Do you want to take part in the base under siege discussion? Or should we just open it up now and say, start sending your notes in?
Start sending your notes.
Send your feedback.
We'll open back up the feedback lines. 1 week and 1 week only. Very good. Well, be sure to check out our website, travelingthevortex.com, for updates. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? And you can do that by clicking on the Patreon link and consider supporting us. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts, because it helps bump us up in the ratings and recommendations. And then make sure you join in the conversation and on our listeners forum on Facebook and engage with other listeners and share your thoughts and insights. Anything else we need to do before we close this one out? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
No, I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You will obey us.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.